So I just got back from the gym, and while I was there, I was thinking about all of my videos have been talking about a lot of the traditions that are primarily familiar to me from maybe Europe and North America. I mentioned a little bit about Africa. I don't really know very much about what might be the history of India. That might be something that kind of overlaps with maybe the story of Ibrahim. So I'm just going to give it a go. I'm just going to give it a try and wonder if the Indus Valley was actually the story of Ibrahim. So I'm going to imagine that he is the one that, um, and this is where I get stuck. Whenever I get stuck like this, I think maybe I shouldn't start with with the story about idols and how they originated. But anyway, I'm just going to give it a go and see what happens. The story that we know is that he had a wife later on in life. So he wasn't, I think, until 90 years old that he actually expected his first infants. So when you think about that, you're just like, wow, we can't really know about what their actual life was like. But we know that the beginning of his life was kind of difficult, and that he was constantly almost challenging his community, as with all the prophets, about some of the ideas that they used to believe in and why he had a hard time kind of believing in them. So he did come across a point in time where his wife Sarah was known to be very attractive, and the king at the time had wanted to almost have her for himself. And Ibrahim was kind of wondering, like, I don't really know how to do this. Um, Almost kind of suggesting that I like, I'm, there's so many struggles already. Like, at what point do I kind of figure out where do I stop and let somebody else defend themselves, and where do I decide this is kind of like a bigger issue that we all kind of have to kind of help defend each other with. So he didn't say that it was his wife. He just said it was his sister. So to him, it was another lie because he's like, it's not actually my sister, it's my wife. And we all know that siblings don't actually marry each other. So what ended up happening as a miracle was that the king was like, oh, it doesn't matter, I don't care. So he actually went to kind of reach out to her, but then his hand froze. So then he knew that was kind of like an indication for him that no, I don't think I should do this. So then he stopped. So later on, um, now like that, I'm thinking about like all the stories that happen throughout time that talk about, like, I wonder what it is that happened from the very beginning of time that made it almost seem like there is going to be a way for men and women to think about each other differently. And is there going to be a time now that we don't have to think about them so differently? So my last video was talking about how, excuse me, if we think about a book, just an empty book with empty pages and a phone. So these are both kind of empty and it's almost giving us a blank slate. So almost like going to try again. So let's assume that the phone and the book are kind of like an idea of a man and a woman. So what would the difference be? Like, would you pick one to be a man and one to be a woman? Or would you say the phone can be a man or a woman and you could say the book could be a man or a woman? And then what would you write? Because it seems sometimes, like in the past, women were seen kind of to be weaker in the sense that because they think a lot about emotions and care, they almost tend to not want to be quick to hurt other people emotionally. So they're almost like, no, 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 I know that this hurts if I say something in this way, or if I maybe pretend to not want to care for you, then, I might think twice and say, no, no, I'm going to try my best. And then maybe after that, I'll decide, no, maybe I need to draw a bit bigger boundaries or stronger boundaries. And then men might think, oh, well, since you're going to, I'm just going to keep assuming that I don't have to try as hard. And then you can continue to kind of um, care for me in a way, or continue to make sure that I'm taken care of, that my feelings aren't hurt in that sense. But now that we're learning a lot about human intelligence and emotional intelligence and like all the different things that we can learn and unlearn, maybe we can almost support men and support women in trying to understand why we both need to know how to care for each other and care for ourselves and how to draw boundaries, and also the importance of being assertive and being able to stand up for ourselves so that women don't have to feel like if I am assertive and standing up for myself, I'm not coming across as a mean person. And if a man decides that, I want to care for somebody, that he's not coming across as somebody who's weak or who doesn't know how to I don't know. I don't know where these ideas come from. Like I'm thinking about them. Like I was outside earlier today, and I'm thinking about like it's almost hard to understand like where do these ideas come from and why do they last for such a long time and how can we almost help people re-understand how to frame them because it's not fair. Like if you think of a guy who's walking and he's got a puppy and he's taking care of him, is that considered weak? Like I don't think so. I think that's compassionate, which is really it shows a lot of care, and that's something that God loves in people. And when they show a lot of care for people, and we know a story about a man who actually went to heaven, and I say this meaning that, like the story that I said about a woman who kind of like loved to give of herself and she ended up going to heaven, it just means that their future lives are usually a lot easier. They usually end up having a life after a life after life that doesn't have all these difficulties that typically result in these ideas that cause a lot of trouble for them in society. So this man, it was kind of a similar scenario where he was in the desert and he was trying to drink water from a well and he was able to drink and he kind of quenched his thirst and then a puppy came to him and then was looking like it's really hot and like almost panting like I need some water too, so the man helped him drink, and for that he also went to heaven, which means it's almost to say that if we are shown ways of showing care, if like so if the universe allows us to find ways to remember to show care to animals or anything that might look like it's really vulnerable in society, then it's almost a way of the universe opening up a way for us to learn how to understand how to nurture compassion in our hearts. And remember, compassion is a thing that's the way God explains himself. So it's a way that we want to understand what life is. So sometimes when we think about God, we don't really know where to start. So just think about compassion. If God's saying that my name is the compassionate, it almost means it's a kind of love that it just continues to give, and it's almost its own reward. So when you love something and you give it love, you end up actually feeling love. So something to contemplate for the next day or two before I guess I post the next video.